How many times have you heard or said, "I won't play that game, it's pay to win"? Most of the Western audience of this video are probably nodding along and agreeing you hate pay to win, but Eastern gamers might be a little more confused at the hostility toward pay to win, maybe even embracing some aspects of it. But even more strangely than the cultural differences, we're probably not actually all thinking of the same exact thing. So what actually is pay to win? Because we all kind of roughly know what it is. It's just where you spend more money and get more power, but that's just one aspect. It's not a defined thing. And many games exist on a scale of pay to win, from none to all of it. But what about the games in the middle? When does the switch happen? Are there games you'd consider pay to win which I wouldn't? And what is the limit gamers should accept on pay to win design? And then how does the existence of pay to win mechanics affect game development? And how does it affect gaming culture across the world? And if pay to win is a scale of severity, could we take several popular games and put them on this scale to see how they compare to each other? Let's find out. Welcome, I'm Josh Strife. I started gaming back on the Amiga 500 in the early 90s with games like Midnight Resistance and Castle Master. Then I discovered arcade with games like House of the Dead and Time Crisis, and then I fell into the world of MMORPGs and spent tens of thousands of hours chopping trees and virtually fishing. And over that time, I've seen games change a lot. You probably have too. So in this video, I'll be looking at the three main areas of what pay to win is, starting with the foundations of why it's appealing, then the designs which make it possible, and finally the impact those designs have on the quality of the games overall. And then we'll look at the pay-to-win scale and see how we can rank different games against each other. But first, this video is sponsored by a very special guest. Me. The good people over at Youtooz decided they needed something to put on their second monitor, so for a limited time only, I'm available in Plushy form. Featuring a little waistcoat and an embroidered mug with a D20 on it, I am 9 inches. Which is also the height of this plushie. Available from March 22nd, I will only be on sale for 2 weeks and then I will be gone. So if you want me sat watching your second monitor with you, chilling with your pets, or just hanging with the crew, this is your only chance. Once you own me, I am yours to do with as you will. You can display me in the living room, or tuck me into your bed, or put me in a jar by the radiator. I cannot stop you, even though I wish I could. Go to youtooz.com and find me there. Check the video description or pinned comment for a link. And remember, after 2 weeks, I will be gone. Jokes aside, being made into a limited run plushie is one of the most awesome and surreal things to ever happen in my YouTube career so far. And that's thanks to you watching the videos. So thank you very much. Back to what is pay to win. Now, I've already covered the evolution of games and anti-player design, dark patterns, and egregious monetization in the video What Went Wrong with Gaming. That video was a broad overview of the entire process, and this video is more specifically about what pay-to-win actually is, which games have it, which don't, and why not all pay-to-win games are equal. Essentially, I want to try and create a scale, from least to most pay-to-win. But in trying to create this 10-stage scale, I ran into a problem. There may be things games do which rate both low and high, or even just in the middle, or high but not low. So instead of a sliding placement, consider this scale a sort of checklist of increasing severity. And the more boxes a game ticks, and the further along these boxes are, the more pay-to-win the game is. Let's start with the foundation, why it's appealing, and this begins with defining the terms and some examples. Pay to win is a 3-word phrase, meaning it's open to a world of interpretation. There will be someone out there, probably watching this video, ready to make the extremely pedantic argument that you need to buy the game before you play it, so technically all games are pay to win, or only people with enough money can afford gaming consoles or free time to play them, so that's a form of payment. I get where these arguments are coming from, I do, but I also feel that they're often made in bad faith. So let's just standardize this. Purchasing the console, or the PC, the game itself, and having the free time to play the game is not going to factor in. What I'm interested in is the experience contained within the game itself, once you've bought the base or standard version. I'm also not going to consider illegal methods of gaining power, such as buying gold in MMORPGs from third-party sellers or using botting software to play the game for you. I will, however, count games which sell their own currency through official channels. And finally, we won't be touching too much on arcade games, because yes, Time Crisis is absolutely pay to win if you are bad at it. Just throw more money to get more lives. In fact, all arcade games work this way. So while I will include the arcade lives mechanic later, I'm mostly looking at full releases, home games games you have bought or subscribed to, generally giving you full access to them from a home console or PC. Now, the most common argument against or justification for the existence of microtransactions or pay-to-win mechanics that you will hear is, you don't need to buy them. Just don't buy them. Ignore them. Play the rest of the game and just don't worry about the pay-to-win aspects. The problem with this argument is the designers absolutely did have to worry about them. And from a creation point of view, for an item or mechanic or system or cosmetic, for anything to be in a cash shop, to be a buyable extra, the designers need to make it worth your money to buy. This means it needs to look cooler or be more useful or be more fun than what is already in the game. Carnage made a really good tweet about this exact thing after the release of Dragon's Dogma 2, which is a game we'll touch on later. Making anything in your game optional and buyable means you need to make it desirable, which means there is now a desirable thing not included in the game that you're already playing, so the game is very slightly worse than it could be. There may be a limited amount of fun items within the game, but more of them available for sale in the cash shop, and while you don't need to buy it if you're a smart gamer, once you realize they've deliberately kept the game back from being the best experience it could be, it's very hard to ignore that sour taste in your mouth. Game designers are smart, talented people, and if there is something in the cash shop, one of the reasons it will be hard to ignore is that part of the game will be specifically designed to make you pay attention to it. But before we get to the 10-part scale, let's set the foundation of why we want to win and why other people matter in this equation a lot. Imagine you start playing a single-player game and realize, hey, if you give the game makers some more money, you will win the game. So you boot up your game, enter your credit card information, and boom, you get the final cutscene and credits roll. You've not even played the game, but well done, you won. This is the equivalent of using a level skip cheat on a game you've never played and thinking, yay, I beat the game. I don't think any of us would consider this pay to win, but why not? You're paying and you've won. I think it's because paying to win isn't about paying to skip the challenge of a game. It's about making the challenge of the game easier. But the player still has to go through the motions of completing it, even though it is substantially easier. That way there is still the feeling of, yes, I beat the game. It's not about being given the reward. It's about taking the reward, even though you've paid for the ability to make the reward far easier to get. Game developers want players to feel accomplished, to feel they've achieved something, and skipping the challenge of the game isn't the best way to give that feeling. But taking on a challenge when you are essentially guaranteed to succeed, it's functionally the same as skipping because you know you're going to pass it, but psychologically, it's the same as actually beating it. So we're not looking to remove content, but remove the challenge of that content, because the victory screen is still being earned, and for many, the destination is indeed more important than the journey, but the journey still needs to happen. Now, this mostly applies to single-player games where pay-to-win does still exist, as we'll see later, but isn't anywhere near as egregious as multiplayer games because vitally, you need someone else to win against. This is another important foundation point. Once you make a game multiplayer, especially competitive multiplayer, the desire to win is increased many times over, and players want every advantage they can give themselves. Playing for a long time and getting good used to be the standard, but this means companies make money from the original sale and then possibly a monthly subscription, but nothing else. What if you could sell power to the weaker players of your game and then they would be able to defeat the stronger, more skillful players? You'd be directly appealing to the I want to win at all costs crowd, which is a very big crowd. Remember, it's essential, like last time, that you don't remove the content, but the challenge of the content. If a weaker, newer player is being beaten repeatedly by a stronger, more experienced player, then that weaker player will want to get revenge. Maybe they don't have the skill to win on skill alone, or the time needed to learn those skills, but they do have some spare money. So they buy some amazing equipment from the game and tip the odds heavily in their favor. But it's not enough just to take the weaker player's money and then say, well done, you're now better. You need to make sure that that paying weaker player gets to fight their old nemesis and gets to win, so they can see the power they've gained. Now we know, and they are on a certain level also going to know that they've won due to the money. But that's not always important. What matters most is they have won. You don't buy the victory directly. You buy the means to achieve the victory. But this doesn't mean the victory, at least for the player, is any less sweet. So psychologically, the two strongest points that pay-to-win can be exploited by are games where challenging content has repeatedly beaten the player and then you can beat the content by using your bought power, and multiplayer games where you have another human to win against. Combine these two and you are hitting that psychological sweet spot of monkey brain wants to win. And developers know this. In fact, the mobile phone city builder Clash of whatever genre thrives on this. So the foundations are people want to win, to beat the challenge of a game, even if that means making the challenge far easier than it should be, and many people still get the same thrill of victory if they achieve the victory, even if they've paid for it. The final development aspect of this is every single level of this scale that we're about to look at will force developers to design their game differently, even if they don't want to. Imagine a complete video game as a line from start to finish. And on that line, you've got everything in the game. Levels, weapons, secrets, it's all there. The complete package, start to finish. This is how a complete game should look, from Tetris to Ocarina of Time to Baldur's Gate 3. The line of the game is full, and when a player has bought it and when they play it, they get all of it. Remember this, because it will matter. Now, I mentioned earlier about Western and Eastern gaming cultures, and the hatred toward paying to win is a much more Western thing. Western gamers, mostly the USA and Europe, value skill in the game itself and mastery of the mechanics, and as such, they don't like pay to win essentially overriding someone's skill with someone else's money. But over in China and Japan, the culture is more accepting of pay to win, as the view is work hard, play hard, and the money earned from working can indeed and should go into your playing. So spending money on gaining power in a game is not only fair, but encouraged. You worked for that money. You are just choosing to see its benefits in the game instead of other areas of your life. Other players could choose to do this. They just don't. That's their fault. Now, when you reduce the time you have to game, then that time becomes far more valuable, and you don't want to spend that limited time playing at weaker, lower, or more boring levels. You want to be powerful, strong, to play the challenging, fun content, and with the continued popularity of internet cafes in the East, paying to boost your character's power and win is seen as normal. Now, for some of the designs I'll be discussing, the example games I'll be using are single-player games, and why would pay-to-win apply there? How would you win in a single-player game? That's entirely up to you. You're not competing. And while it's true that many people only consider winning to be important when other human players are involved, the reason I'm using these games is to show an example of the effect that money-first design can have on a player's experience even when alone, knowing it will only get more extreme when other people get involved. If you and I both bought Tomb Raider back on the PlayStation 1, we would be experiencing the same game. Even if we played it in different ways, extra money wouldn't change the gaming experience we both had access to. But if we both bought Deus Ex Human Revolution back when that launched, our experiences would be different depending on if we bought the Standard Edition or the Augmented Edition, the latter containing exclusive quality of life updates like automatic door hackers, extra weapons, or starting the player with extra in-game money so you can upgrade things faster. Even if Deus Ex is a single-player game, by spending a little bit more money to purchase the better edition, you are given the tools to win a little bit easier than someone who didn't do that. There used to be this unspoken agreement that buying a single-player game would give everyone who bought that game the same challenge of the game, but that's just not true anymore. So now, let's get to that 10-point scale. Remember, this isn't so much a linear put your game here scale, it's a checklist of increasing severity. And one game might hit multiple of these points. In general, the more boxes you tick, the more pay to win the game is. We'll discuss the mechanical effects of a player's experience of each point as we get to it. There is also the very real chance as a game ages, it will start to tick more and more of these boxes as the developers add in more and more pay-to-win aspects. Let's start at level 1. You can't pay to win at all, because there's just no way to give the game money beyond the original purchase. This would be your early standalone console games, where the hardware just didn't have the ability to deliver DLC or updates. If you bought Tekken on the PlayStation, you had Tekken. You couldn't pay to make a kick do extra damage. It was you versus your opponent, and you both had the whole game. Even the early MMOs like EverQuest or Vanilla WoW could have been placed here back in the day. You buy the game, pay the sub, and then you've got access to all of it. But as we'll see, that has changed. The game design line here is just full, complete, start to finish. Here's the entire game. Enjoy. But then we go to level 2, which is where money only buys non-mechanical, non-gameplay related stuff such as in-game cosmetics or client-side UI overhauls. The best example of this, and also conveniently where all the microtransaction junk started, is the Elder Scrolls Oblivion and that stupid horse armor. You can indeed throw money at Oblivion and get the horse armor, or you could back in the day, but it was purely cosmetic, and that's an argument used by many people to defend pay-to-win systems. They say it's okay, it's just cosmetic, and that might indeed be true, but this is where the designers have to start making hard choices. Because to the players, yes, it's just aesthetic, but to the designers, it's now a choice of which aesthetics are worth it. If you're selling cosmetics in your game, then you now have a vested interest to keep the cool-looking stuff for the cosmetic shop exclusively. So remember that line of complete game. When you have a cosmetic shop, it's not a complete line anymore. There's a little bit missing. Not mechanically, aesthetically. It's still missing, locked behind a little bit more money. So if cosmetics and a complete experience matter to you, this is where pay-to-win starts, because you're not winning until you have the coolest looking armor, and you can't get that without paying. This is the moment game design changes from how much can we add to how much can we remove and sell as extra. And that point is expanded on in the What Went Wrong with Gaming video. I'll link that below. On to level 3. Money can indeed buy power now, but it is easily matched with very little time invested, so any advantage is small or short-lived. Imagine you start playing a game, but you discover you can buy a really powerful weapon for just a few pounds or a few dollars more. That would feel unfair. But what if the same weapon was also found in the game itself about 10 minutes into the game? Would you still feel it is as unfair? A good example here is what happens when you buy all the expansion packs for Fallout New Vegas. You start the base game with a grenade launcher and more medical supplies, which means you are absolutely starting with an advantage, but you will lose the advantage quickly as you find weapons that are better. It's a similar situation with tiered subscriptions giving you percentage bonuses in online games, like how you can become a higher tiered member on EverQuest and gain small boosts. They're not game-breaking, but they do save time. And ultimately, if you and someone else play for the same amount of time, you won't be able to compete. The person with the advantage will win. Now, this kind of pay-to-win can be easily beaten with a bit more time invested from the non-paying player. But notice how we've just started that slippery slope, justifying how it's not that bad. If you have to justify why something isn't as bad as people think, you're accepting that people have a natural belief that it is bad, and you're now on the defensive, which isn't a great place to be. We see this in MMORPGs where you can buy early boosts and buffs, maybe 1 week of extra power, or a unique pet which has an early game buff but only applies if you're under a certain level. It is an undeniable early game advantage, but it becomes less important as time goes on. If we take the line of game design, this time a paying player isn't starting at the start. They're starting a little bit ahead, or they're playing with an early game advantage, so the early game sections is easier for them. They are undeniably winning, but only in the short term and only in the early game. On to pay to win level 4. Money can now buy system-based advantages which don't directly interact with other players but do make your life easier. Money does not remove challenging gameplay directly, but does make the other stuff around it easier. This is more mechanically complicated, so imagine a game where you can only carry one weapon at a time, but then you bump into a boss which needs another weapon to kill it, meaning you've got to drop your current weapon, no matter how good it may be, and find another. That would be irritating. But what if you could pay to have the ability to hold 2 or 3 weapons? Suddenly, you've made your gameplay experience more efficient and more streamlined. You've not changed the difficulty of the boss itself, you still need to kill it, but by improving other systems around it, you've made your experience far smoother. This would be games which limit bank space, like Path of Exile selling stash tabs, or Neverwinter Online letting you summon a bank from anywhere provided you are a high enough VIP subscription level. And don't get me wrong, I love Path of Exile. I think it's the best online action RPG around today, and for a free game I can understand why this purchase is here. But the ability to buy more bank tabs is absolutely a non-moment-to-moment gameplay mechanical advantage. And this will be used by many people to claim the game is pay to win. With this in mind, we can take the line of game design and say it would now look like this, with the normal gameplay line being much more awkward to navigate and money smoothing out the experience. You don't lose anything here, it's just a bit harder to get to unless you pay. Developers know this, and they're often encouraged by the higher-ups to make the systems in the game a little bit more awkward than they need to be, just so they can sell you the simplified solution. Is why I mentioned that money-first design will affect everything. Multiplayer games and single-player games, slowly but surely. Pay to win level 5. Now we're getting to where money in can actually skip chunks of the game, or boost you past non-challenging but tedious sections, giving you a big time advantage, like level boosts in almost every MMORPG. Leveling a character in an RPG or MMO game usually isn't hard, it's just time-consuming. The only real challenge to collecting 10 bear asses 50 times is finding the time to kill 500 bears. And the annoying thing is the fun gameplay, the bosses, the dungeons, the raids, the exciting modern stuff is usually more toward the end of the game. And killing those 500 bears is a required task to get there. So what if you could just pay to not do that? Level boosts in MMORPGs, limited time experience boosts, level up tokens, any game where you can pay any amount of money to skip the early, non-challenging content fits in here. You're not paying to skip the fun stuff, you're paying to get to it faster, and this is a massive time advantage over players not doing that. Now, the consequences for game design here should be rather obvious. If we take the gameplay line, it now looks like this, with the start of the line being deliberately boring and dull to encourage the player to pay a little extra to skip it and get to where the game, realistically, should actually start. This is especially egregious in MMORPGs with class-locked characters if you want to play multiple classes at higher level content. You're now either putting in hundreds of hours doing the same early game content repeatedly, or paying to get to the end game fun bit quickly to actually enjoy the game with your friends. This is unfortunately why many MMORPGs have busy work quests lower level. They don't want you to do them. They want you to pay to skip them. On to level 6. Money now directly equals power, but it will reach a cap that another non-paying player could realistically catch up with if they exclusively and heavily play that game. A good example of this level would be Neverwinter Online, or even Black Desert Online. In many online games, you need to upgrade your weapons, armor, or abilities, and doing this usually needs reagents which you can get by playing the game, but they are slow to gather, or there is a chance that your attempted upgrade will fail, wasting your reagents. Thankfully, you can either buy more of them, or buy insurance items which guarantees the upgrade succeeds, or saves your reagents if it fails. Now, these systems are technically available to free players as well, but only if they spend an absolutely insane amount of time playing that game alone and grinding away. You're talking multiple hours a day, every day of the week, maybe even on multiple characters. Playing nothing else, having no other hobbies, a free player would have to spend hours to achieve the same power or advantage a paying player could get within minutes. The main argument you'll hear against this being pay to win is how it's technically still possible for a free player to do. And yes, it is technically, theoretically possible. But practically, it's extremely unlikely. You'll hear people say, oh, this is actually just pay for advantage, not pay to win, because you're not gaining anything exclusive. You can still win. And I can understand that argument. But you must understand that being able to reach the highest power level in a game without the extreme time sink or the extreme risk of losing it all, that is not just an advantage, that is winning. This kind of advantage includes the ability to buy items which revive you after death, or revive your entire team if you fail at a boss. Even if you can buy those items in-game for absurd amounts of in-game gold, the ability to buy them for real money places them here. The only saving grace of this system is there is a cap. Weapons can be maxed out, levels can hit a total, and a paying player will, eventually, hit a ceiling and not be able to go any higher. So money will equal power to a cap. It's still massively pay to win, and the chance of a free-to-play player ever reaching the cap is absurdly low, but it is still, theoretically, possible. The game design line would now look like a game of snakes and ladders. There is a win condition, but free players only get one roll of the dice a day and almost all of their squares are snakes. Paying here just gives you more dice rolls, more ladders, and fewer, if any, snakes. This is where arcade games sit, allowing more lives for more money. The money you put in is another chance to prove your skill, and the cap is actually beating the game. And now we get to level 7. Money directly equals linear, guaranteed power, and it will not reach a cap, essentially allowing unlimited money to buy unlimited power. Wallet versus wallet. The only way a non-paying player could even theoretically catch up is with unhealthy amounts of play or a team of people supporting them. This would be your mobile games, competitive city builders like Clash of Whatever, or those old Facebook games like Farmville. While back in level 6, money bought you power to a cap and then stopped, here in level 7, there is no cap. The power gain just continues. Yes, it gets absurdly expensive. It just keeps going. You can have more money, more power, more lives, more defense. No matter what an enemy player throws at you, you will always be able to potentially throw more money at it to survive. Can a free player beat a paying player in this scenario? Technically, yes, because the free player also has access to everything in the game. But the amount of time it would take to gather the same amount of resources is now approaching theoretical only. There's no practical way you'd be able to play long enough to compete with the higher paying players. This is where the pay for advantage people start to lose face, because it's very hard to defend this system as being anything else than pay to win. This is also when companies start selling power directly, like the RuneScape bond, which can be sold for in-game gold, or the WoW token, which effectively works the same. Many years ago, games companies were heavily against real-world trading, but eventually they realized the best way to combat it was to join it and control it. So instead of watching the third-party websites get all of the money, they just started selling power in their own game themselves. This is one of the saddest, if you can't beat them, join them realities of modern games as a service design. The company will sell you the game and will then sell you the power within it, because they know enough people will buy it. The game design line now looks like this. It's an unending line, but free players will only ever progress along it slowly, even at their most efficient. Paying here just jumps you ahead of others a certain amount. The line is endless. The finish line does not exist. All that matters is being the player that is furthest along, knowing at any moment someone could overtake you if they spend enough. The only real positive here is you know what you are getting for your money. There's no ambiguity. Yes, you could in theory spend £1 million, but you would also know exactly what you would get for that £1 million. But when you take away that guarantee, we reach level 8 of pay to win. Money in now becomes gambling to potentially gain power, but is not guaranteed. This would be your common gacha mechanics. Maybe the base game is free, maybe it's paid, but there will be a system in the game now where you can pay to potentially get more power, and the more you pay, the greater the chance. So why do I think this system is more insidious than the linear pay for guaranteed power? Well, it's because this system relies on gambling, and so it appeals to those with addictive personalities far more. It is still pay for power, yes, but the guaranteed advancement is replaced with the thrill of the gamble. Could be more, could be less. You could spend very little and gain a great deal. You could spend absolutely loads and gain nothing. You can't budget for the power gained, and this means often you end up with far more people spending far more than they intended, either due to the gambler's fallacy or the sunk cost fallacy, or just plain old addiction. And game designers know this, and they want to exploit it. At this point, the pay-to-win nature is on full show, because the game design line now looks like a mess. So many game elements will be reshuffled, repurposed, or just straight up removed and only available in paid chance boxes, loot boxes, or gacha. Buying the base game now doesn't even really get you a full game. It just gets you a foundation, a framework designed to encourage you to spend more money to flesh out the frame. From EA wanting to give us a sense of pride and accomplishment by unlocking Vader, or RuneScape making us buy treasure hunter keys to open more chests and gain gold, experience, or exclusive equipment, down to FIFA's Ultimate team needing endless card packs open to find the best player, and then that will reset the next FIFA game, because FIFA is just Genshin Impact for people who like middle-aged millionaires. And the reason games use gacha is because it works. FIFA's Ultimate Team made more money last year than almost any other video game. Once you add gambling to your game and give potential in-game advantages for real money, with more money meaning more chances, you're firmly within pay-to-win territory. The only positive about this level is technically, free players can, in theory, still access all of the content. Maybe they get 1 or 2 free packs or free spins a week. Or maybe the rare items from other players can be sold to free players for in-game money, which those players can earn. I mean, it would take more time than you would ever play the game for, potentially longer than the game's servers even remain online. But in theory, and theory alone, it is still possible. But then we reach level 9, where winning without money is not possible anymore. Not even theoretically. Hello, Diablo Immortal. I did wonder when you'd be showing up. Back when Diablo Immortal launched, I made a rather thorough breakdown about exactly why it was anti-player. The video is called Diablo Immoral, and this example fits perfectly here. To level up your equipment in Diablo Immortal, you need legendary gems. How do you get those gems as a free player? You don't. You just quite simply don't. You can't get them, you have to pay. But does that mean there are effectively 2 games, where paying players compete with other paying players, and free players can play with free players to keep things fair? No, not at all. Of course it doesn't. Paying players absolutely get paired up with free players, who have literally no way to get the same power level. And once each type of player has reached their theoretical maximum, paying players will dominate in PvP. Guaranteed. This is by design. This level of pay to win is much rarer because it loses the defense of, well, it's just pay for advantage. Free players can still do it because now the free players can't do it. When your pay-to-win system cannot be defended even by your most hardcore fans, you are in dangerous territory, and you will burn up any goodwill you had with the public. We've looked before at how goodwill is a currency. You earn it when you do good things, and you spend it when you do bad things. And pay-to-win of this level is one of the ultimate withdrawals of player goodwill. These games are few and far between because most developers either aren't greedy enough or aren't stupid enough to consider making them. You need to give yourself the theoretical defense of, well, technically a free player can still do it, while here they just straight up can't. The game design line now looks like this. There's just a hard gate in the middle which can only be opened with money. There is no way around it. Getting past this requires you to pay again. But that was only level 9. What the hell is level 10? Well, this is the more paradoxical level. Any game can go here depending on what you as an individual want from it, and what it as a game has decided to lock behind a paywall. I personally wouldn't consider Oblivion pay to win. But if you only want to play it with the horse armor on, and you bought the base game expecting access to everything in the game, then yeah, I guess to you that's now an additional payment that you need to make to be able to win the game in your mind. I would consider Diablo Immortal pay to win, but I was still able to have fun playing through the campaign with some friends, killing some bosses, and then moving on without paying anything. So I won my experience at that without paying. The issue here is just what you consider your own personal win state. I've known people refuse to even start games because they realized they'd never be world class without paying more money. But the strange reality is they were never going to be world class anyway. They didn't have the time or the inclination to be world class. They just saw that the very top levels of the game were unachievable and thought, no. I'm not slighting them for never going pro, but it's kind of like saying, I'll never be a professional footballer, so there's no point having a fun kick around in the park with my mates. In the world of gaming, for some people, the existence of any level of pay to win at all, even if they wouldn't reach it, will put them off playing the game entirely. I've had friends play gacha games, spend very little, enjoy their time, and move on. They weren't the best in the world, but they considered it a win in their book. They didn't want more. Did they pay to win? Yes, but they were happy with what they paid for. Did they win at the game by being the absolute best? No, but that wasn't what they were going for in the first place. People may tell you that game isn't pay to win, it's just cosmetics. But if you only play for fashion and having cool cosmetics is your own personal win condition, that game will be pay to win for you specifically. Ultimately, almost every live service game or every online game, MMORPG, competitive multiplayer, gacha, or mobile game will have some systems where you can give the game more money for more stuff. And if that stuff is important to you, you're going to see it as pay to win. If it isn't important to you, then you won't. Maybe you've only got a limited amount of time to play per week and you know that playing without paying is going to keep you stuck in the dull, boring, repetitive bit for ages. Or going into an open PvP match would be pointless because you would never stand a chance against people with more time or more money. So maybe you spending money is just leveling the playing field to make it fun. Or maybe you'll only ever do PvP against your friends and both agree to not spend money, making it equal the entire time. Winning doesn't always mean being top of the leaderboards or having the best stuff in the game. Sometimes it's a more personal goal. But if any element of that goal is locked behind a paywall, it will affect you. Now, I'm not defending these insidious development practices. I don't agree with them. But I am saying the is it pay to win argument is much more nuanced than yes or no. There are some games you can say definitely, no, it's not. And some which are undoubtedly, yes, it is. But there's far more games in between, in that grey area, that personal area. So when you're trying to evaluate a game, see how many of the levels of pay-to-win scale it fits into, and score it from that, because it will differ from person to person. But ultimately, when you look at the modern state of pay-to-win in all games, it all again boils down to that stupid horse armor. My God, Bethesda, do you have any idea the horrors you were unleashing on the world when you did that? Did you know what you would do? It all began here. Patient zero of the state of gaming is that horse. This is all your fault, Todd. Cheers for watching. Another massive thank you to all the supporters on Patreon and Twitch who keep the channel alive. You can support from only £1 a month. Check the video description for links to the Patreon, Twitch, Twitter, and our Discord. And as always, have a great day.